What happens when over 20 alien species are dropped on a brutal, wind-scoured planet with no tech, no tools, and one rule survive? One human steps forward, not with strength, but with knowledge, grit, and the power to bring strangers together. From fire to filtered water, from enemies to allies, this is not just a fight to live. It's a lesson in how we rise. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel and show a thumbs up by liking the video. Now, let's jump into the story. The dry wind on Keros 13 sliced across the salt flats like a blade, stinging skin and biting through cloth. Reina Cordova blinked against the twin violet suns, rising over a burnt orange sky. She sat up slowly, tasting dust in her mouth. Around her, silence gave way to confusion. Beings from over 20 alien species staggered upright, each dressed only in survival-grade garments made of local fiber, no armor, no gear, no weapons, no tools. The air buzzed with tension and disorientation. Some competitors cried out in alien tongues. Others stood still, trying to understand where they were. No one had technology. The moment their feet touched the ground, everything high-tech had failed. Reina stayed low and quiet. She had seen this kind of chaos before back on Earth. In survival trials, she used to lead across desert basins and snow-covered forests. Panic always came first. Her heart pounded, but her mind stayed focused. The ground beneath her was uneven and cracked, the top layer of salt hardened by years of solar heat. She ran her fingers through the crust and found softer earth just beneath. Not dead, just scorched. She crouched, breathing evenly as others around her started yelling for instructions. That's when the voice came. It echoed from every direction at once, smooth and artificial. Welcome, candidates. You will survive for 7 full rotations. No tools, no signals, no external support. Judgment begins now. The message ended, and so did the voice. No map, no shelter, no guidance. Just 7 days to prove your worth in a place designed to break you. While others argued or froze, Reina scanned the horizon. Far in the distance, jagged rock shapes rose, like shattered coral, and just beyond that, she spotted the faint shimmer of potential plant life. It wasn't much, but it was more than the scorched flatlands. She didn't wait. Survival didn't favor the loud, it favored the first to act. She walked away from the group, her footsteps crunching softly. A 6-limbed arachnid creature thrashed. In circles nearby, shrieking, a scaled trio began arcing commands at each other, forming ranks like soldiers. No one tried to stop her. The sun climbed fast, the heat pressing down like a thick blanket. Her skin began to prickle, but she kept moving. After nearly an hour of walking, she reached the edge of the formations. Up close, the rocks were cracked and hollow like ancient bones. Thin, brittle tree-like growths jutted from crevices, gray and flaking. There were no leaves, but the base of the trunks showed signs of life, tiny buds and veins pulsing faintly with moisture. The heat here was still harsh, but the towering rocks offered shade, and the wind dropped to a dull whisper. It was the best chance she had. Reina set her pack down. It contained nothing but a rolled fiber wrap and a stone knife blank, more symbolic than useful, and took a knee. The first priority was fire. Nights on planets like Keros 13 could fall below freezing within minutes. Without fire, shelter wouldn't matter. She searched the rocks for anything sharp. It took time, but she found 2 stones, one metallic and smooth, the other gritty and uneven. She struck them together, awkward at first. No spark. She adjusted the angle and tried again. A spark flared, then died. Her wrists ached, sweat slid down her back. She breathed in slowly, then struck again. This time, the spark caught. A wisp of smoke curled up from a dry patch of fibrous bark she had stripped from the nearest trunk. Raina leaned in, hands cupping the tiny ember, and blew softly. The ember glowed brighter. She added thin twigs cracked by hand, slow and careful. The flame caught. It was small, barely larger than her palm, but it was enough. She sat back, feeling the relief settle into her bones. Fire meant heat. Fire meant life. With the flame steady, she began building a shelter. She had no tools, but the brittle plants snapped easily. She wedged 2 larger limbs into the rocky ground and leaned smaller ones against them, weaving cross branches for support. She packed handfuls of dry vegetation over the frame, weighed them down with vines and flat stones. It wouldn't survive a storm, but it would trap warmth and keep out the worst of the wind. The work was slow. Her hands stung with splinters. But when she crawled under it, her knees brushing the packed dirt, she felt a small flicker of pride. She wasn't comfortable, but she was protected. Later that afternoon, she sat beside the fire, rationing her breath. Her lips had begun to crack. She needed water. A shimmer on the horizon gave her hope. Whether it was real or a mirage, she would find out tomorrow. For now, she needed to conserve strength. Screams echoed across the flats. Some sounded like pain, others like confusion. A large silicon-bodied being curled into itself nearby, unable to cope with the heat. But Raina didn't move. Not yet. Not until she had secured her space dot. As the suns dipped low and the sky darkened into indigo, she fed her fire one last stick and lay down on her back. Through the opening in her shelter, she stared at a sky filled with purple stars and 3 cold moons. Her muscles ached. Her fingers were raw, but her mind was calm. Day 1 was nearly done. 6 more to go. And while others were still shouting, still wandering, still unsure of what to do, Raina Cordova had already started to survive. The first gray light crept across the arches, and Raina Cordova felt ice on her lashes. Sometime during the night, the heat had vanished, replaced by a brittle cold that left thin frost on the salt-cracked ground. She sat up, her shoulders stiff. Beneath the woven cloak of bark fibers she had tied together before sleep, the fire had survived only as a nest of dull coals. Her tongue was thick, her throat dry enough to hurt. She knelt, fed the coals a pinch of twig shavings, and puffed, until an orange glow returned. Flame flickered to life, but it did not quench thirst. Water now ranked above everything. She rose and scanned the eastern rim of the flats. Yesterday she had noticed shimmering mirage lines beyond the arches. If they were more than heat tricks, liquid might lie there. She grabbed a strip of vine, knotted one end around her waist so she could carry bundles later, and set off. Each step crunched the salt crust. After half an hour, the land sloped gently downward. The cracked floor gave way to patches of darker soil, then to scattered tufts of golden moss that steamed in the early sun. Insects thin-bodied and luminous darted between the moss clumps. Raina followed them, trusting that life seldom wanders. Far from moisture, a faint trickling sound reached her. She slowed, heartbeat quickening. Beyond a jagged ridge of stone, she found a narrow stream winding lazily through a shallow trench. The water looked cloudy, tinted pale teal, and an oily. Sheen drifted on top where sunlight struck. She crouched, dipped 2 fingers, and lifted a drop to her nose. It smelled sharp, almost metallic. Untreated, the water would poison her. She scooped a small mouthful, swished it against her tongue, then spat it out. A sour aftertaste lingered, but no burning, no numbness. Filtration and boiling might make it safe. She needed a container. A broad piece of bark had peeled off one of the nearby tree stalks overnight. She pried it free, folded the edges up, and used vines to lash corners, forming a crude dish. Next, she collected charcoal from the remains of last night's fire, crushed it between two flat stones, and layered it in the bark dish with small pebbles and sand scooped from the stream bank. She poured stream water through the layers. It seeped out slow and clear on the other side, puddling into a second bark dish. She repeated the process 3 times, each pass lighter than the last, until the water resembled melted glass. Both the makeshift bowl and dish carefully, she returned to camp. The suns were higher now, and frost had already burned away. She rekindled her fire into steady flames, balanced the dish on 2 stones near the hottest embers, and waited. Steam rose, minutes stretched. At a rolling boil, she counted to 60, then slid the dish aside to cool. Her body screamed for liquid, yet she forced patience. When the water finally reached lukewarm, she sipped. Earthy, smoky, but no bitterness. She drank slow until her stomach warned her to stop. Relief flooded every muscle. A scraping noise made. Her turn. A glass-winged insectoid stumbled from between 2 arches, faceted eyes hazy. Thin membranes across his back rattled weakly. He dropped to his knees a few steps from her fire and sagged in exhaustion. Raina grabbed the cool dish, knelt beside him, and lifted it to the small hinged mouth beneath his mandibles. He drank. In trembling gulps, some liquid spilling onto the salt. Color brightened in the translucent bands of his exoskeleton. After a minute, he managed to sound something between a chirp and a croak. Raina pointed to herself and said, "Raina." The insectoid tapped his chest plate twice and rasped, "Dralix." Names exchanged, they shared a silent understanding. Alone meant dead. Together held promise. While Dralix rested, Raina searched for more resources. Near a cluster of stunted shrubs, she discovered oval pods with translucent skins. She split. 1. Slippery sap oozed out, foaming slightly when mixed with ash on her fingers. Soap, perhaps. She carried a bundle back, mixed sap with warm water and a dusting of charcoal powder, then scrubbed her hands. A light lather formed, lifting grime. She washed her face. Sweat salt vanished, and her skin felt renewed. Hygiene would deter infection and raise morale. A low growl drifted from the west. Raina turned in time to see a silver-maned quadruped, limping toward camp. The creature's side bore a long, crusted gash, its breathing ragged. Raina kept her posture open, palms visible. The alien collapsed before reaching the fire. Raina hurried over, cleaned the wound with boiled water, then pressed soap ash paste along the split hide. The quadruped's eyes fluttered. A whispered word escaped cracked lips. Celu. Raina wrapped strips of softened bark around the injury and eased Celu onto a mat of vines near the warmth. Dralix watched, then dragged more branches to feed the flames. By midday, the 3 shared a fragile settlement. Raina demonstrated the water filter, guiding Dralix's nimble claws to layer sand, gravel, charcoal. She showed Celu how to gather the foamy pods, extract sap, and dry the husks on a rack woven from thin limbs. Hours passed in steady work. They strengthened the lean-to with extra poles and lined the floor with charcoal to keep dampness low. Now and then distant roars rolled across the flats, but none drew close. Late afternoon sunlight deepened into amber. Raina noticed wisps of dust on the horizon, curling upward like smoke. She climbed a rock spire for a better view. Far out, on the plain, an ochre wall of wind-driven sand marched toward them, swallowing everything in its path. The sky above it pulsed with static, tiny flashes of electricity within the storm's heart. She slid down, landing beside Dralix and Celu. Her gaze said enough. The insectoid snapped into action, driving stakes deeper around the shelter. Celu, though weak, used her powerful forelegs to drag larger stones against the windward side. Reyna tied bark panels over the entrance, leaving only a slit for air. The first gust rattled the structure. Sand hissed through every crack. Inside, 3 figures crouched close to the fire, which now sat in a pit they had scooped minutes before. Ash swirled but stayed contained. Reyna pressed soap pods and water skins close to her chest. Cellulose. Bandaged side bled anew, but she remained silent. Dralix extended one claw until it touched Reyna's wrist in a gesture of shared courage. Outside, the storm roared like an angry sea. Inside, 3 strangers breathed together, held by flame. Water, ash, and the first threads of alliance. A muted gray dawn seeped through gaps in the bark walls, revealing a camp still coated in fine sand from the night-long storm. Reyna Cordova woke first, ears ringing with the ghost of the wind's howl. The fire pit, buried to its rim, smoldered. Under a blanket of ash, she shoveled it clear, coaxed a slender flame, then checked on her companions. Dralix's wings were folded tight, their glassy panes dulled by grit, yet his breathing was steady. Cellulose slept with her muzzle on her forelegs, bandages stained, but wounds sealed. Outside, the storm had sculpted new dunes against the basalt. Arches, and the horizon shimmered clean for the first time in 2 days. Reyna refilled their bark pot with filtered water, boiled it, and let the steam rise. The camp smelled faintly of charcoal and sap, oddly comforting after so much dust. While she worked, Dralix stirred, lifted a claw, and traced a circle in the soot's silent request to expand the shelter. They both knew more survivors would come. A storm had driven everyone toward any hint of warmth or flame. Reyna nodded. Together they stripped limbs from nearby skeleton trees and wove fresh panels. Salu joined soon after, dragging thicker logs with quiet determination despite her limp. Before noon, a shadow passed overhead, an avian with wings the color of midnight, drawn by smoke spiraling into the pale sky. He landed at the edge of camp, feathers trembling from fatigue, and eyed the fire with a mixture of caution and need. Reyna stepped forward, palms open, offered a cooled scoop of water. The avian drank, then spoke a single word in careful common. Corfin. She pointed to herself, then to Dralix and Celu, naming each. No promises, no speeches, only 4 beings, choosing to breathe the same air. They built outward. Dralix used spear-thin talons to pierce holes through bark planks so vines could lace them. Corfin, light and agile, perched on the arch tops too. Dropped raw limbs where they were needed most, his wings catching pink sunlight as if painted with fire. Celu gathered fresh moss from deep cracks near the arches. Inside camp, it served as bedding, floor insulation, even fuel when dried. Reyna marked a circle of stones for a larger kill pit, then lined it with charcoal and sand. Soon a low, steady heat rolled outward, giving the camp a heart that never fully cooled. Clean water streamed from a row of bark funnels, packed with gravel and crushed coal. Bars of drying soap pods hung from a makeshift rack that rattled softly in every breeze. A fragile order emerged, and with it something none of them had felt since arrival: rhythm. Around mid-afternoon, another figure appeared, a small amphibian with mottled skin, crouching in the shade like a frightened child. When Reyna approached, the creature raised webbed hands in surrender and whispered, "Lero." She guided Lero inside, let Corfin translate gestures into reassurance, then pressed a warm bowl of broth water thickened with roasted moss into trembling fingers. 5 survivors now shared one fire, 5 different heartbeats echoing off rock walls. The peace lasted until twilight. As the twin suns bled orange, a tall reptilian stepped from the dunes, scales banded in rust and obsidian. He wore no injuries, carried no thirst, and moved with cold intent. Reyna rose while the others formed a quiet semicircle behind her. The stranger's voice slid across the camp like a blade. "I am the ruin. Your fire belongs to me." No one answered. Corfin's feathers lifted, but he stayed still. The ruin smiled thinly and took a step forward. Selyu growled low, her silver mane bristling. Dralix's wings clicked. Reyna lifted a hand, calm but firm. "Share or leave," she said. The ruin's eyes narrowed to golden slits. "You think union beats strength? Tomorrow I return, and your circle will break." With that, he pivoted and strode into the dusk. Only when his silhouette vanished did everyone exhale. Night fell crisp and quiet, but sleep stayed distant. Reyna lay near the kill, staring at stars that glimmered like icy sparks. How many other camps had failed already? How many wandered alone? Her eyelids drifted shut, yet fresh wind soon brushed her cheek. She sat up to see metallic drones descending on silent rotors, scattering blue pinpoints across the sand. Each drone projected a holographic glyph above the camp, a countdown glowing bright 24 hours. Beneath the numbers, alien script scrolled and translated itself into galactic common. Final measure imminent. Cooperation metrics Lev. Reyna felt her pulse thud. Final measure. The Arbiter's true test was coming, and whatever remained of humanity's and every species' honor would be judged by how these scattered souls chose to breathe together or suffocate apart. Morning arrived with frost on every panel. They rose before dawn, tightened walls, doubled water output, and trained. Reyna taught Corfin and Dralix how to notch stone tips onto fire-hardened stakes. Selyu rehearsed defensive lines, forelegs rooted, wounded flank braced by bark splints. Lero, smallest of them, wove loops of vine into trip lines across the entrance path. When the suns cleared the ridge, glints of movement flickered along the flats. The ruin returned, and not alone 5 warriors in jagged scale followed, torches of resin blazing purple in dry air. The breathers' circle formed backs to the kill, weapons light as kindling but heart steady. Yet as the invaders reached the perimeter, drones reappeared overhead, their blue beams scanning every body, friend and foe alike. A warning tone pulsed, and text ignited in mid-air. Resources shared add value. Violence subtracts tenfold. Varun hesitated, torch raised. Reyna stepped forward, lowered her stake, and rolled a fresh water bowl toward him. She placed a bar of lathered soap into his clawed hand and waited. Around them, the circle lowered their makeshift arms. Silence stretched until the reptilians' shoulders eased. He sniffed the bowl, then drank. One by one his band copied him. Drones flashed green. The countdown dissolved dot above. The sky split with thunder as a silver arc ship lowered on shimmering columns of light. A voice calm, omnipresent declared, assessment complete. Cooperative resilience confirmed. The ground itself rose, a hidden platform carrying the entire camp toward the vessel's open bay. Wind whipped through hair, feathers, membranous wings. Reyna gazed down. Dunes rolled aside like theater curtains, revealing fertile terraces prepared for the next wave of hopefuls. As the platform docked, she reached into the kill, drew out a glowing coal, and placed it atop a flat stone at the platform's edge. Beside it, she set a bundle of soap pods and etched a single sentence with the tip of her charred stake. "Start here, together." Then she followed her companions into the bright interior, hearts light with breath they had earned. As one, the lift platform locked into the belly of the silver arc with a hiss, and warm air rolled over Reyna Cordova's face. Cabin lights glowed soft gold, a jarring comfort after days of raw sun and stinging dust. Around her, Corfin folded his wings and stared wide-eyed at polished walls that reflected twin moons through a glass roof. Dralix's glassy shell brightened in the gentle warmth. Selyu breathed without pain for the first time since the wound had opened on day 2. Even Varuans. Warriors dropped their torches, linking like children at the hush that filled the hold. A circular door slid open. The Arbiter's voice flowed from hidden speakers, no longer the distant echo of the desert, but close, almost human. Step forward for final audit. Thin beams of white light swept over the group, pausing on every bruise, every bandage, every soap-stained hand. Holographic screens appeared in mid-air, showing numbers that rose and fell beside each name. Hydration supplied, shelter hours shared, conflict avoided. Rain shimmered off Lero's skin as the amphibian shifted nervously. But when the beam reached him, the numbers spiked. He had woven 43 meters of vine line work that saved the camp roof during the storm. Reyna saw the total climb beside Corfin for scouting distance and for warning the camp of sandstorm fronts. Even Varuan's column ticked upward after the system counted the hours he carried heavy stones once his pride thawed in the firelight. The Arbiter's tone stayed flat. The trial did not measure who could survive alone. It measured who could expand survival to others. A pause, as if letting the words settle. Then the floor vibrated and the ceiling iris widened, revealing the twin moons, one copper, one pale sapphire hanging low and enormous. Gravity lightened. Their platform rose again until everyone stood beneath transparent glass. Beyond it, Caros 13 stretched in violet desert and black arches, the camp's glowing coal still burning atop its stone pedestal far below. The Arbiter continued. Before verdict, each cohort will speak one sentence. Choose your speaker. Eyes turned to Reyna. She felt her heart drum but nodded once. We breathe stronger when we breathe together. Her voice sounded small in the vast chamber, yet the Arbiter recorded it with chilled precision. No one else spoke. Her words floated amid quiet INHILATIONS. Data streams froze on the holograms. Green bands flared. Consensus achieved, the system said. Judgment, exemplary. A soft chime followed, and restraints melted away from the lift edges. Dralix clicked his mandibles in relief. Selyu sagged, silver mane falling over bright eyes. She was finally safe. Varuan exhaled a hiss he had likely held since his first. Demand beside their fire. Panels slid open on the far wall, revealing med pods stocked with nutrient mist and clean clothing shaped to dozens of species. Reyna guided Selyu to one. Corfin helped Dralix into another, careful of fragile wing joints. Varuan's warriors looked lost, unsure if mercy extended this far. Reyna waved them forward. They stepped in cautiously, scales catching gentle overhead. Light instead of desert flare. She followed last, but the door closed before she reached an empty pod. A narrow bridge illuminated beneath her feet, leading to a viewing alcove at the ship's edge. There the Arbiter manifested as a shimmering figure, not human, not alien, but a silhouette of pure silver light. Reyna Cordova, Earth Delegate, it said. Record shows you initiated all cooperation metrics. Request a boon, one item or action granted before departure. She thought of better water filters, stronger shelters. But the image of the coal and soap pods on that stone filled her mind. She pictured the next wave of hopefuls, stepping onto salt flats with nothing but their hearts pounding. Seed the desert with moss spores, she said. The kind we used for bedding and medicine. Plant them near every first day landing point, so the next teams find living green sooner. The Arbiter's form pulsed once, like a nod. Approved. Tiny drones shot from vents, streaking toward the planet below, thin silver comets, destined to burst and spread hardy moss across barren ground. Relief washed through her. She had not asked for personal reward. Still, she felt richer than any. Metal could promise. Her med pod opened then, and she stepped inside damp mist that smelled faintly of pine. Microjets cleaned sand from her lungs, sealed cuts on her hands, and eased muscle knots in her shoulders. 10 minutes later she emerged, wearing soft gray fiber clothes and pliable shoes. The others waited in a lounge rimmed with broad windows. Twin moons shone down, painting every face with half copper, half blue light. Food trays hovered nearby, broth rich with protein algae, fruit cubes sparkling with sugar. Lero chewed happily, cheeks bright. Selju slept curled on a cushion, breath even at last. Dralix stood beside Corfin, the insectoid's wing membranes fluttering as he explained some quiet joke that made the avian click in laughter. Varun approached Reyna, head bowed not in defeat, but acknowledgement. Stronger together, he said, testing human words. She smiled. Stronger together. A soft gong signaled atmospheric re-entry. The arc dipped, windows tilting to show the desert again, now dotted with faint green where drones had already burst. New landing flares winked on the horizon as the next cohort arrived. Reyna's heart tightened. She could almost feel their fear across the miles of empty sky. She pressed her palm to the glass. On the salt flat below, the coal she'd left glowed steady, a beacon impossible to miss. A short line of letters still burned beside it. Start here, together. The arc banked north toward a towering space elevator that glittered like a thread to the stars. Overhead, the moons began to set, one sinking into dusty pink clouds, the other glistening against oncoming dawn. Reyna watched until copper rim met horizon. Then she turned to her companions. Ready for the next stage? She asked. Dralix flexed his wings. Corfin spread feathers. Selju opened rested eyes. Lero trilled softly. Varun squared his massive shoulders. They did not know what waited above the elevator diplomas, more trials or invitations to greater worlds. It did not matter. They would walk into it the same way they had faced desert, storm, and doubt side by side. Twin moons vanished behind the curve of Tyros 13 as the elevator dock sealed. The cabin lights dimmed and a soft hum of ascent began. No one spoke. Instead, 6 beings from 5 species closed their eyes and breathed, each inhalation echoing the same quiet promise. Whatever came next, they would make room for every other breath.